There's a specific type of person whose favorite pop star is a cartoon. A cartoon? Lindsay, you have gone too far this time. This is madness, ridiculousness, complete and utter absurdity. Oh, really? Really? Did we forget about Powerline, the accidental icon who defined a generation, the myth, the moment, the magic, the movement, and all those good things? Listen in with Lindsay. Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of Listen In with Lindsay. I'm your host, Lindsay, an award-winning singer and voice actress who loves talking all things music, cartoons, TV, anime with you. If you do enjoy my content, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment to keep up to date with all of the fun. Now, picture the kind of silence that happens right before a concert starts. Not the quiet kind, not the peaceful kind. It's that charged silence, the one where the crowd is holding its breath. The lights dim, the noise swells, and for just a moment, everyone in the room believes in the same thing. Now, here's a strange question. How many of you have felt that watching a cartoon? Because for an entire generation, that moment didn't happen at a real concert. Oh no, it happened in a Goofy movie. And the person standing on that animated stage wasn't real, but he felt real. His name was none other than Powerline. Okay, here's the weird truth. Powerline, he barely exists, okay? Let that sink in. He isn't the protagonist. He isn't the antagonist. He rarely speaks. He sings. That's him. He has almost no backstory. And yet, nearly 30 years later, people still talk about him. And he was a real pop star. They remember his songs. They remember his look. They remember how it felt when he came on screen. Some people even say, without irony, that Powerline was their first favorite musician. Not Michael Jackson, not Prince, although heavy inspiration by Prince, not Britney Spears, Powerline. So the question isn't who Powerline is. The real question is, how did Disney accidentally create one of the most culturally impactful fictional musicians of all time? But first, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by me. My creativity, vision, and drive to create wonderful, glorious kids content for the next generation. My current project is a preschool sing-along starring a giraffe named Gigi, who sings and plays with all her colorful preschool pals. We have 13 fun kid songs available to download and stream. Guys, we even have fun vinyls and CDs. If you have a little one that needs some color and music in their life, then head on over to lrodco.com/GigiBrand. That's lrodco.com/GigiBrand. Enjoy! Okay, to understand Powerline, we have to understand the world he was born into. The early 1990s, well, to mid-1990s, I guess. They weren't subtle. This was the era of stadium tours, pyrotechnics, backup dancers, wind machines blowing at full force. Music wasn't just something you listened to anymore. It was something you watched. MTV didn't just change the industry, it rewired how audiences connected to artists. Pop stars stopped being singers. They became events. And if you were a kid during this time, those artists felt untouchable, larger than life, almost unreal, which is ironic because Powerline was literally unreal. Here's the thing most people don't realize, and I learned a lot of this watching that Disney Plus documentary, Not Just a Goof. So informative, so cool, you gotta check it out. A Goofy movie was not a prestige project. Disney didn't expect it to be iconic. I think were working on like a really big budget to see if they could produce in a less expensive way, but they didn't expect this to define a generation. They barely marketed it. This movie existed in the shadow of the Disney Renaissance. We're talking Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and compared to those, a Goofy movie was small, messy, experimental, and that's exactly why Powerline worked. Because no one was overthinking him. Powerline doesn't feel like a Disney character. He doesn't wink at the camera. He doesn't crack jokes. He doesn't exist to sell plush toys. He exists the same way real celebrities exist in our world. Through screens, through crowds, through reputation. No one in the movie explains who Powerline is. They don't need to. Everyone already knows. That world building at its most subtle. Oh, that is world building at its most subtle, duh. And I guess most powerful. Powerline works because Max works. Max isn't cool. He isn't confident. He isn't special. He's just a kid who wants to matter. And Powerline represents something important. Belonging. Knowing the lyrics, knowing the dance, being part of the moment. When Max talks about Powerline, he sounds like a real fan. Because he is one. And so are we. When Powerline finally appears on stage, the movie changes. The animation gets sharper, the colors get louder, the movement gets smoother. This isn't a cartoon concert. It's a concert, a real concert. The choreography hits hard. The vocals are polished. The staging is flawless. This is not, a parody. This is respect. And kids can feel that difference, even if they can't explain it yet. Children are experts at detecting lies, They know when something is fake. They know when something is trying too hard. And Powerline never begs for attention. He earns it. And that's why kids believed in him. Not because he was flashy, but because he was treated like he mattered. The genius of Powerline isn't just the music, it's the timing. He appears at the exact moment when Max is at his lowest, when the lie has collapsed, when the relationship with his dad feels broken, when everything is on the line. And Powerline doesn't save the day by talking. He saves the day by performing. Because sometimes music says what words can't. Powerline wasn't meant to be iconic. He wasn't designed to last decades. He wasn't built to represent a generation. He was just supposed to be believable. And somehow that was enough. It really was. But let's understand why it worked. There's a rule in character design called the silhouette test. The idea is simple. If you black out all the details and just look at the outline of a character, you should still know who they are. Powerline passes this test instantly. Tall, broad shoulders, wide stance, exaggerated posture. He doesn't slouch. He doesn't shrink. He occupies space, and that alone communicates power before he even sings a note. Now let's talk about color. Powerline is neon, not muted, not soft, not realistic. Electric greens, deep blacks, contrasted with glowing highlights. These aren't accidental. In the 90s, color like this meant futurism. It meant edge. It meant the next thing. And Powerline doesn't look like he belongs to any specific year. He looks like he belongs to tomorrow. And that makes him timeless. Powerline's outfit isn't casual. It's armor. The high boots, the structured jacket, the gloves. This is stage wear. It's, meant to transform a person into a symbol. Real pop stars do this all the time. The outfit says, I am not here as a regular human being. I am here as something larger. Powerline wears that identity comfortably, like it's second nature. If you want to understand why Powerline feels real, watch how he moves. Not just what he does, but how he transitions. There's no stiffness, no hesitation, no filler animation. Every motion flows into the next. And that kind of movement takes effort. It takes animators who understand performance, not just drawing. Powerline dances like someone who has done this 1,000 times, because in the logic of the world, he has. And the camera loves him, baby. Powerline is shot like a star. Low angles, wide crowd shots, quick cuts between performer and audience. The camera doesn't observe him. It celebrates him. This matters more than people realize because the audience at home learns how to feel based on how the camera feels. And the camera is in awe. Powerline's voice isn't cartoonish. It's smooth, controlled, confident. There's no exaggeration for comedic effect. No goofy inflections. This voice belongs to someone who knows exactly who they are. And that certainly is contagious. And when kids heard Powerline sing, they didn't think, oh, this is a character. They thought, oh, this is a professional. Did we also notice that he doesn't talk much? One of the smartest choices Disney made was limiting Powerline's dialogue. The less he speaks, the more powerful he becomes. Mystery creates mythology. And we don't know his struggles. We don't know his past. We don't know his insecurities. All we know is the performance, just like real celebrities. And the less you know, the more you project. It's giving reality through restraint. Powerline never breaks tone. He never cracks a joke at his own expense. He never acknowledges the absurdity of the situation. He never acts cartoony. That restraint is why he feels grounded. The movie bends around him. He doesn't bend for the movie. Like any pop star, Powerline isn't powerful on his own. He's powerful because of the crowd, screaming, dancing, singing along. The audience inside the movie validates him as a performer, and that gives the audience outside the movie permission to believe. We see others care, so we care too. Powerline could have been parody, a quick laugh, a throwaway gag, a silly pop star stereotype. But he isn't. He's treated seriously, and kids can tell when something respects them. Powerline respects the idea of music. He respects the idea of music as something meaningful, something worth showing up for. Powerline was designed with intention, even if Disney didn't realize the long-term impact. The people making this movie knew one thing. If you're going to create a star, you have to treat them like one. Powerline wasn't just impressive, he was aspirational, and that distinction is everything. Powerline is not a character you relate to directly. You don't imagine being him. You imagine being close to him. That's how real celebrity works. Celebrities aren't mirrors, they're magnets. They pull people towards a version of themselves that feels bigger, brighter, more confident. Powerline isn't written to be understood. He's written to be wanted. The fantasy of arrival, my friends. All right. Powerline represents arrival, not growth, not struggle, not potential. Rival, what we all aspire to. He's already successful, already adored, already complete. That's important because most of the movie is about characters who are still figuring things out. Max is insecure. Goofy is misunderstood. Their relationship is messy. Powerline exists on the opposite end of the spectrum. He is what having it together looks like. Here's the thing. When you're young, the world feels unstable. Adults contradict themselves, rules change, social hierarchies shift constantly, icons offer stability. Powerline is consistent. He doesn't change moods. He doesn't falter. He doesn't second guess himself. Every time he appears, he delivers exactly what's promised. That reliability builds trust. But there is also the power of not knowing. We know almost nothing about Powerline's personal life. No interviews, no scandals, no vulnerability, and that's not a flaw. It's the point. The less information you have, the more room there is for projection. Kids fill in the gaps with imagination. Adults do this too. And that's how you become larger than their actual screen time. A lot of modern storytelling tries to make everyone relatable. Powerline doesn't need that. No sirree, Bob. Relatability creates connection, but distance creates awe. Powerline stays just far away enough to remain untouchable. And that distance is what makes the concert feel special. You're not watching a guy perform. You're watching a moment happen. The story treats him as the goal. Inside the movie, Powerline isn't a side detail. He is the destination. The entire road trip exists because of him. Every setback matters because it threatens access to him. And that structure teaches the audience something subtle. This thing matters, not because the movie says so, but because everything bends around it. Why he is never embarrassed. Powerline is never humiliated, never corrected, never undercut, never made smaller. The movie could have gone for easy laughs. It didn't. That restraint protects the fantasy. And once Powerline is embarrassed, it's hard to believe in him again. Powerline remains intact, untouched. The crowd completes the myth. Powerline is never alone. He is always surrounded by people who believe, screaming, dancing, reaching. That crowd tells the audience how to feel. If everyone else cares this much, maybe it matters. Belief is contagious, and the movie understands that. Max serves as the audience surrogate. Max isn't obsessed with Powerline because he's shallow. He's obsessed because Powerline represents social survival. knowing the lyrics, knowing the moves, knowing what matters. Music becomes a passport, and Powerline is the gate. That feeling, wanting access to culture so you don't feel left out, is universal. And that's why this lands across generations. Powerline doesn't teach a lesson. He isn't there to be analyzed. He exists as proof that something can be great simply because it is. And that's refreshing, especially in a story full of conflict and growth. Sometimes the world just has things worth loving. Powerline matters because he represents the fantasy of certainty, of confidence, of arrival, of being adored without explanation. He is the thing you want to reach. In the next part, we're going to talk about emotion, about Max and Goofy, about the concert scene, and about why Powerline's final performance still gives people chills decades later. So let's talk about it. The concert, the lie, and the emotional payoff. At that point, Powerline isn't just a pop star in the story. He's a destination, a promise, a finish line. But to understand why his final performance hits so hard, we need to talk about what's happening emotionally around him. Because Powerline doesn't work in isolation. He works because everything else is breaking. The road trip is a pressure cooker, basically. A Goofy movie is a road trip story, and road trips do something very specific in storytelling. They trap people together. There's no escape, no reset button, no pause. Every small conflict stacks one on top of the other. And by the time the characters reach the concert, everything is already raw. That emotional tension is what gives Powerline's performance weight. Max's lie, we gotta get into it. Max's lie isn't evil, it's desperate. He lies because he's scared of being invisible, especially to Roxanne. He lies because he wants to belong. He lies because being honest feels like social death. Powerline becomes the symbol of that lie, not because Powerline did anything wrong, but because Max tied his identity to reaching that moment. Why do the stakes feel this high, this huge? Objectively, missing a concert isn't life-ending, right? But emotionally, when you're a teenager, it can feel catastrophic. Music isn't entertainment it's not just entertainment at that age. It's really currency. It decides who you sit with, who listens to you, who takes you seriously. Powerline isn't just a show, he's validation. Now, what was Goofy? The obstacle. Did you guys realize that? From Max's perspective, Goofy isn't just a dad. He's friction. He's unpredictability. He's embarrassment. He's everything that threatens the image Max is trying to build. And that's what makes the conflict hurt. Because Goofy isn't wrong. He's just out of sync. When the lie finally collapses, the movie stops being playful. There's no joke to soften it, no music to distract from it, just disappointment. That moment matters because it strips everything down. No Powerline, no fantasy, no cool factor, just a kid who feels like he failed. Notice something important. Powerline disappears from the story for a while. The movie doesn't rush back to him because this isn't his moment. It's about the relationship. If Powerline showed up too early, he'd cheapen the emotional work. So the movie waits. The concert is literally catharsis. When Powerline finally re-enters the story, it's earned. The emotional arc is complete. Max and Goofy have confronted the truth. They've acknowledged each other. They've let go of the fantasy. Now, Powerline can return, not as an escape, but as a celebration. And that distinction is crucial. Everything converges at once. The lights, the music, the crowd, and right in the middle of it, Max and Goofy. Not as enemies, not as obstacles, but as partners. Powerline's stage becomes neutral ground, a place where embarrassment doesn't matter. Why this scene works. This scene could have been chaotic. It could have been chaotic. Too many characters, too much movement, too much noise, but it's focus. The camera keeps returning to connection, to shared glances, to synchronized movement, to trust. Powerline doesn't overshadow the moment. He amplifies it, especially with the perfect cast dance. The dance isn't about accuracy, it's about effort. Goofy isn't good at it. That's the point. He's trying in front of thousands of people. That vulnerability lands harder than perfection ever could. And Powerline accepting it without hesitation completes the emotional arc. People still get emotional watching the scene, not because of nostalgia alone, but because it resolves something universal. The fear of being seen, the fear of being rejected, the hope that maybe, just maybe, trying is enough. Powerline becomes the backdrop for that resolution, and that's why he's unforgettable. Powerline doesn't save the story by being a hero. He saves it by being the stage, a place where fear dissolves, where honesty survives, where connection wins. So, we're stepping outside the movie into the internet, into fandom, and into why Powerline never faded away, even after the credits rolled. There's legacy, memes, and why Powerline never really left, okay? By the time the credits roll, Powerline's job is technically done. The story is complete, the relationship is repaired, the moment has passed. And yet, Powerline doesn't disappear. In fact, for many people, that's when he starts to matter. The strange afterlife of fictional stars. Most fictional musicians vanish when their movie ends. They exist only inside the story. Powerline didn't. He followed people out of the theater, into their bedrooms, onto their playlists, into their memories. People remembered him like he was real. And that's kind of unusual. Why did he stick? Powerline stuck because he was never framed as temporary. The movie didn't say, this is just for this story. It treated him like part of the world. And that means audiences were free to keep believing. And belief is sticky. The internet's rediscovery, because years later, the internet found Powerline again. Clips resurfaced, songs were shared, screenshots became memes, a new generation saw him without context, and somehow he still worked. That's the ultimate test of an icon. If it works without explanation, it lasts. Memes as modern myth. Memes aren't jokes, they're shorthand. They say, if you know, you know. Powerline memes aren't mocking him. They're celebrating him. The poses, the outfits, the confidence. He's remembered as cool. That's rare for a character from a children's movie. Now, there's a lot of conventions and cosplay with him too. Powerline didn't just live online. He showed up in real life. At conventions, as I said, on stages, in cosplay. People didn't dress as him ironically. They dressed as him proudly because Powerline isn't embarrassing. He aged well. And the songs never left us. The music carried him forward. Those songs weren't written like throwaways. They had structure, hooks, energy. People still sing them, still dance to them, still recognize them within seconds. That's longevity. And you know why Disney didn't really expect this? Disney never built a franchise around Powerline. There was no sequel centered on him, no concert specials, no official expansion, which makes his survival even more impressive. He lasted without corporate momentum. That means the audience did the work. Powerline, well, whenever fictional musicians appear, people compare them. Does it feel real? Does it feel earned? Does it feel respected? Powerline quietly set the bar, not through hype, but through execution. He still feels modern. Powerline doesn't feel trapped in the 90s. His performance style feels timeless. The confidence, the spectacle, the sincerity, he fits just as well in today's media landscape as he did back then. That's not nostalgia. That's good design. His unintentional legacy. Powerline became proof of something important, that even a small role handled with care can outgrow its source. Oh, yes, it can. He wasn't meant to be the takeaway, but he became one because people hold on to things that made them feel something. So, Powerline never left because he never needed permission to stay. Powerline kept the momentum, and people kept him alive through memory, through sharing, through love. In the final part of this analysis, I guess, we're going to close the loop. Why Powerline still matters, what he represents now, and why this accidental icon still has power decades later. Powerline was never supposed to last this long, as I said. He wasn't the hero, he wasn't the focus, he wasn't even real inside his own story, and yet decades later, people still talk about him. That alone tells us something important. Fame is loud, impact is quiet. Fame fades when attention moves on. Impact lingers when something connects. Powerline didn't dominate the screen. He made the most of the time he had, and that's why he lasted. It's easy to dismiss Powerline as nostalgia, but nostalgia doesn't survive scrutiny. When people revisit Powerline, the reaction isn't embarrassment, it's appreciation, because the performance still holds up. The animation still works. The emotion still lands. That means it wasn't just childhood magic, it was quality. Powerline is sincere, unapologetically so. There's no irony in his performance, no self-awareness, no attempt to downplay the spectacle. That kind of sincerity is risky, but it's also powerful because when something commits fully, audiences feel safe committing too. We needed Powerline, guys. For a lot of people, Powerline represented a moment when art felt big, when music felt important, when showing up for something, it really mattered. He symbolized the idea that it's okay to care deeply, to love something loudly. That's not childish, that's human. So his stage was really, I want to say, a metaphor. Powerline's stage is more than a setting, it is a metaphor. It's a place where mistakes don't define you, where effort is enough, where connection beats perfection. That's why the climax works. Not because Powerline is flawless, but because the space he creates allows others to be imperfect. Powerline taught us, without teaching, that's something. Let's get into it. Powerline never delivers a lesson, but he demonstrates something powerful. That excellence doesn't have to be cruel. That competence doesn't have to exclude. That greatness can make room for others. That's rare. It's a rare message, especially in stories about fame. Powerline wasn't engineered to be remembered. He was allowed to be good, and sometimes that is enough. When creators trust their audience, when they respect the moment, when they don't undermine sincerity, icons happen. Powerline is proof that impact doesn't always come from intention. Sometimes it comes from care, from taking a small role seriously, from treating music like it matters, from letting a moment breathe. Powerline mattered because he was real in the way that counts. He was never the main character, but for a lot of us, he stole the show. All right, that's it for our show. Don't forget to stand out and see things eye to eye. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye. Listen in with Lindsay.